The winter wind cut through Rosa's thin jacket like a knife. She pulled the worn fabric tighter around her shoulders, but it did little to stop the cold from seeping into her bones. Standing on the sidewalk outside Belmont's restaurant, she watched through the tall windows as people in expensive clothes enjoyed their warm meals. Her stomach made a low, painful sound. When was the last time she had eaten? Yesterday morning, maybe. She had found half a sandwich in a trash can behind the coffee shop. It wasn't the worst thing she had eaten since living on the streets, but the memory still made her feel sick. Rosa was only 19, but she felt much older. 3 months ago, she had been living in her last foster home, counting down the days until her 18th birthday. She thought freedom would feel different. She thought she would have more choices. Instead, she found herself with nowhere to go and no one who cared enough to help. The foster care system had been her home since she was 12. That was when her parents died in a car crash on a rainy Tuesday evening. Her mother had been singing along to the radio. Her father had been telling a joke about his boss. Then in one terrible moment, everything changed. Rosa remembered the funeral. She remembered the social worker with kind eyes who promised everything would be okay. She remembered moving from house to house, never staying long enough to feel at home anywhere. Some families were nice. Others were just doing it for the money. None of them understood her. Now standing in the cold, Rosa wished she could go back to any of those houses. Even the worst ones had food and warm beds. She had tried staying in shelters, but they were full most nights. She had tried asking for help, but most people looked right through her like she was invisible. The restaurant looked so warm inside. Golden light spilled onto the street and she could see people laughing over their dinner. In the far corner, a beautiful black piano sat quiet and waiting. Rosa's heart jumped when she saw it. She hadn't played piano in months. Her last foster family, the Johnsons, had an old upright piano in their basement. Mrs. Johnson said she could practice as long as she kept the volume down. Rosa would sneak down there every chance she got, running her fingers over the yellow keys and playing the songs she taught herself from videos on her phone. Music was the only thing that made sense to Rosa. When she played, all the sadness and fear went away. The world became simple again. Just her, the piano, and the music flowing between them. She had started learning when she was 8 before her parents died. Her mother found an old keyboard at a yard sale for $5. Rosa took to it like she had been playing her whole life. Her mother used to say Rosa had magic in her fingers. "You're going to be famous someday," her mother would say, watching Rosa play songs she had never heard before. "You're going to play in big concert halls and I'll be in the front row crying happy tears." But her mother never got to see Rosa grow up. Never got to see how good she became at playing. Never got to keep that promise about the front row. Rosa wiped her eyes and looked back at the restaurant. The piano called to her like an old friend. She knew she could play it. She knew she could play it better than whoever usually played there. But how could she get inside? She had been standing there for almost an hour, trying to work up the courage. People walked past her without looking. Some crossed to the other side of the street when they saw her torn jeans and dirty sneakers. She didn't blame them. She probably looked scary to people who had never been homeless, but she wasn't scary. She was just hungry and tired and desperate. Rosa took a deep breath and walked toward the restaurant door. The man standing there wore a fancy black suit and had perfectly combed hair. He looked at her with raised eyebrows as she approached. "Excuse me," she said, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. The man, whose name tag said manager, looked her up and down. His expression wasn't mean exactly, but it wasn't friendly either. "Can I help you?" he asked, though his tone suggested he didn't really want to help. Rosa's hands were shaking, but not from the cold this time. "I was wondering, I know this might sound strange, but I can play piano. Really well. And I was thinking maybe I could play for your customers tonight." The manager's eyebrows went higher. "Play piano?" "Yes, sir. I've been playing for years. I know lots of songs. Classical music, jazz, popular songs, whatever people want to hear." Rosa could see other staff members gathering behind the manager. A waiter with a red tie. A hostess with perfect makeup. They were all looking at her like she was some kind of interesting animal at the zoo. "And what exactly are you asking for in return?" the manager asked. Rosa felt her cheeks get hot. This was the hardest part. "Maybe just a meal? I haven't eaten in a while and I thought, maybe if I played really well it would be worth a plate of food?" The manager blinked slowly. Then he started to smile. Not a kind smile, but the kind of smile people get when they think something is funny. "You want to play our piano for food?" he asked, loud enough for the other workers to hear. The waiter with the red tie laughed. "Did she just ask to play for scraps?" The hostess covered her mouth, but Rosa could see she was trying not to laugh too. Rosa felt like running away. This was a mistake. These people thought she was a joke. But then her stomach made that painful sound again, loud enough for everyone to hear. She was so hungry it hurt. "Please," she said, looking directly at the manager. "Just give me a chance. 5 minutes. If your customers don't like it, I'll leave right away. But if they do like it, maybe you could spare a sandwich or something small." The manager looked at her for a long moment. Rosa could see him thinking, probably trying to decide if this homeless girl was worth his time. Finally, he shrugged. "You know what? It's been a slow night. Maybe our customers would enjoy some entertainment." The way he said entertainment made Rosa's skin crawl. She knew he expected her to fail. He probably thought it would be funny to watch her embarrass herself in front of all those well-dressed people. But Rosa didn't care what he thought. She just cared about the piano waiting in the corner and the chance to play again and maybe getting something to eat. "Thank you," she said. "You won't regret this." The manager held the door open for her. "We'll see about that." Rosa stepped into the warm restaurant, and for a moment she couldn't move. The smell of fresh bread and roasted chicken hit her so hard she felt dizzy. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but she forced herself to focus. She had one chance to prove herself, and she couldn't waste it. The dining room was full of people in nice clothes, men in pressed shirts and women wearing jewelry that probably cost more than Rosa had ever seen in one place. They were all talking and laughing, completely unaware that a homeless girl had just walked into their world. The manager walked ahead of her, moving between the tables with confidence. Rosa followed, very aware of how out of place she looked. Her sneakers squeaked on the polished floor. Her jacket had a small tear near the pocket that seemed to get bigger with every step. "Ladies and gentlemen," the manager said, raising his voice just enough to get attention, "we have a special treat tonight. This young lady has offered to provide some musical entertainment." A few people looked up from their meals. Rosa could see the confusion in their faces. Who was this girl in old clothes? What was she doing here? The piano sat in the corner like a sleeping giant. It was the most beautiful instrument Rosa had ever seen. The black surface was so shiny she could see her reflection in it. The bench was covered in soft leather that looked like it had never been sat on by anyone who wasn't wearing expensive clothes. Rosa's hands were shaking as she approached it. Not from nerves exactly, but from excitement. It had been so long since she had touched a real piano. The keyboard in her last foster home had been old and some of the keys stuck. Before that, she had practiced on a beat-up piano at the community center that was missing 3 keys and sounded like it was dying. But this piano looked perfect. Rosa could tell just by looking at it that it would sound amazing. She sat down on the bench and lifted the lid that covered the keys. The black and white keys seemed to glow under the restaurant lights. Rosa placed her fingers on them gently, like she was greeting an old friend. The first touch told her everything. This piano was more than perfect. It was exceptional. The keys responded to the slightest pressure, and even without playing a note, Rosa could feel the potential for beautiful music humming inside the instrument. She looked out at the restaurant. More people were watching now, though most of them still seemed confused. She caught sight of the waiter with the red tie whispering something to another server. They were both trying not to laugh. Rosa took a deep breath. She knew exactly what she wanted to play. It was a piece she had learned by watching videos over and over until she had memorized every note. She had practiced it on the old upright piano in the Johnsons' basement until her fingers could play it without thinking. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was one of the most beautiful pieces ever written, and Rosa had always felt like Chopin understood something about sadness that other people didn't. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes floated into the air like silk. Rosa had forgotten how good a real piano could sound. Each note was clear and perfect, with a richness that seemed to fill every corner of the room. At first, only a few people noticed. The couple at the table nearest the piano looked up from their conversation. The woman's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. The man tilted his head like he was trying to figure out where the music was coming from. But as Rosa continued to play, something magical happened. The music was so beautiful, so perfectly played that it demanded attention. Conversations began to fade. People stopped eating. One by one, every person in the restaurant turned to look at the girl at the piano. Rosa poured everything she had into the music. All the loneliness of the past 3 months. All the fear of not knowing where she would sleep or when she would eat again. All the sadness of growing up without parents, of never having a real home, of being invisible to most of the world. But she also poured in the hope. The hope that music could save her. The hope that someone somewhere would see that she was more than just a homeless girl. The hope that her mother had been right when she said Rosa had magic in her fingers. The notes danced and swirled around the room. Rosa's fingers moved across the keys like they had been born to do nothing else. She wasn't just playing the music. She was becoming the music. A woman at a corner table started to cry. She tried to hide it behind her napkin, but Rosa could see the tears running down her cheeks. At another table, a man had completely forgotten about his expensive steak and was leaning forward, his eyes wide with amazement. The manager who had let Rosa in was standing near the kitchen door, his mouth hanging open. The waiter with the red tie had stopped laughing. In fact, he looked like he might start crying too. Rosa could feel the change in the room. The air itself seemed different, heavier, more important, like something significant was happening and everyone knew it. She transitioned into another section of the piece where the melody became more complex. Her left hand played deep, rich notes that seemed to come from the earth itself, while her right hand danced across the higher keys like sunlight on water. This was the part where most pianists struggled. The timing had to be perfect and the touch had to be just right or the whole piece would fall apart. But Rosa's fingers knew exactly what to do. They had played this passage hundreds of times in basements and community centers, on keyboards with broken keys and pianos that were older than she was. A man in an expensive suit had pulled out his phone and was recording. Rosa could see the screen glowing, but she didn't care. She was lost in the music now, in a place where hunger and cold and loneliness couldn't touch her. As the piece moved toward its ending, Rosa played with even more emotion. This was her chance. Maybe her only chance. If these people didn't understand how good she was, if they just saw her as entertainment, she might never get another opportunity like this. But she could feel it in the room. The stillness, the attention, the way people were holding their breath, afraid that any sound might break the spell she was weaving. The last notes of the nocturne hung in the air like stars. Rosa held her hands above the keys for just a moment, letting the silence stretch out. Then she lowered them to her lap and looked out at the dining room. Every single person was staring at her. The silence was complete. No one was eating. No one was talking. No one was even moving. Then slowly one person started to clap. Then another. Within seconds, the entire restaurant was on its feet, applauding like they had just witnessed something miraculous, because they had. The applause seemed to go on forever. Rosa sat at the piano bench, overwhelmed by the sound of so many hands clapping for her. She had dreamed of moments like this when she was younger, but the reality was bigger than anything she had imagined. People were not just clapping. They were standing up, some wiping tears from their eyes, others shaking their heads in amazement. The woman who had been crying was now openly sobbing, but they looked like happy tears. Her husband had his arm around her, and he was staring at Rosa like he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Rosa stood up from the bench on shaky legs. She wasn't sure what to do next. Should she bow? Should she say something? She had never performed for real people before, only for empty rooms and her own reflection in basement windows. The manager who had let her in was walking toward her, but he looked completely different now. The smug expression was gone. Instead, he looked shocked, maybe even a little embarrassed. When he reached Rosa, he didn't say anything for a moment. He just stood there looking at her like he was seeing her for the first time. That was... He started, then stopped. I've never heard anything like that in my life. Rosa felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with being inside the heated restaurant. Someone understood. Someone heard what she was trying to say with the music. Thank you for giving me the chance, she said quietly. The manager shook his head. No, thank you. Our customers have heard professional pianists before, but nothing like what you just did. He paused, looking around the room where people were still talking excitedly about the performance. Let me get you that meal. The best we have. As the manager hurried away, Rosa noticed that people were coming toward her. The first was an elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. My dear, he said, I've been playing piano for 60 years, and I've never heard someone your age play with such emotion. Where did you learn? Rosa felt shy suddenly. All these well-dressed people wanted to talk to her, but she wasn't sure what to say. I taught myself mostly. From videos and library books, the man's eyes widened. Self-taught? That's remarkable. You have a gift that goes far beyond normal talent. More people gathered around her. A young couple wanted to know if she took requests. An older woman asked where she performed regularly. Rosa tried to explain that she didn't perform anywhere, that she had been living on the streets, but the words felt strange in her mouth. These people seemed to exist in a different world from hers. Then a woman pushed through the small crowd that had formed around the piano. She was probably in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant style. She wore simple but expensive clothes, and there was something in her eyes that made Rosa pay attention. "Excuse me," the woman said to the others. "I need to speak with this young lady privately for a moment." The crowd hesitated, clearly wanting to keep talking to Rosa, but something in the woman's tone made them step back. The woman waited until they had moved away, then looked directly at Rosa. "My name is Dr. Chen," she said. "I used to teach at the conservatory downtown. I've spent my whole life around music, around talented young people who dream of making music their career." Rosa's heart started beating faster. She could tell this conversation was going to be different from the others. "What you just played," Dr. Chen continued, "wasn't just good. It wasn't even just exceptional. It was the kind of performance I might hear once every few years from someone with years of professional training." She paused, studying Rosa's face. "And you say you're self-taught?" Rosa nodded, not trusting her voice. "How old are you?" 19. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, and Rosa could see her thinking carefully about something. "Where do you live? Who are your teachers? What school do you attend?" These were the questions Rosa had been dreading. She looked down at her worn sneakers, feeling the shame creep back in. For a few minutes while she was playing, she had forgotten about being homeless. She had forgotten about being different from everyone else in the room. "I don't have teachers," she said quietly, "and I don't go to school anymore. I've been living on the streets for a few months." When she looked up, she expected to see the same expression she usually got when she told people she was homeless. Pity, maybe. Discomfort. The urge to get away from her. But Dr. Chen's face showed something else entirely. It showed understanding and something that looked like anger, but not anger at Rosa. "You've been wasting away on the streets while you have this gift?" Dr. Chen's voice was sharp. "This is criminal. Do you understand what you are? You're not just talented. You're what we call a prodigy, the kind of musician who comes along maybe once in a generation." Rosa felt dizzy. No one had ever talked about her like this before. In foster care, she had been just another kid who needed a place to sleep. On the streets, she had been invisible. But Dr. Chen was looking at her like she was important, like she mattered. "I don't understand," Rosa said. "Let me put this in perspective for you," Dr. Chen said, pulling out her phone. "I recorded your performance. In my 40 years of teaching, I have heard thousands of young musicians. I have taught students who went on to perform with major symphonies, who have won international competitions. What you just played was better than most of them could do on their best day." Rosa felt tears starting to form in her eyes. "But You're not just anything," Dr. Chen interrupted firmly. "You are a remarkable musician who has been let down by every system that should have recognized your talent and nurtured it." The manager appeared at Rosa's elbow with a plate piled high with food. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh vegetables, and a piece of chocolate cake that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Rosa's stomach clenched with hunger, but she found it hard to look away from Dr. Chen's face. "Eat," Dr. Chen said gently. "But while you eat, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Your life is about to change if you want it to." Rosa picked up the fork with trembling hands. The first bite of chicken was the most delicious thing she had tasted in months, but she barely noticed. She was focused completely on Dr. Chen's words. "I run a foundation now," Dr. Chen continued. "We find young musicians who have exceptional talent but need support. We provide housing, education, private lessons with the best teachers, and opportunities to perform." Rosa stopped chewing. "You mean like a scholarship?" "I mean like a complete new life," Dr. Chen said. "If you're willing to work hard, if you're serious about music, I can help you become the musician you were meant to be." Rosa set down her fork. Around them, the restaurant continued to buzz with excitement about her performance, but she could barely hear it. All she could hear was Dr. Chen offering her something she had never dared to dream about, a chance to start over. A chance to be more than just a girl with nowhere to go. A chance to let her music save her. 6 months later, Rosa sat in a practice room at the conservatory, staring at a piece of sheet music that might as well have been written in a foreign language. Her fingers ached from 4 hours of practice, and her head was spinning with everything her new teacher had told her about proper technique. The transformation had happened faster than she ever could have imagined. Within a week of meeting Dr. Chen, Rosa had been moved into a small but comfortable apartment near the music school. It had a real bed, a kitchen with actual food in the refrigerator, and best of all, a beautiful upright piano that was hers to play anytime she wanted. At first, Rosa couldn't believe it was real. She would wake up in the middle of the night expecting to find herself back on the streets cold and hungry, but every morning she would open her eyes to see sunlight streaming through clean windows and hear the sound of other music students practicing in the building next door. Dr. Chen had kept every promise she made. That night in the restaurant, Rosa now had proper meals 3 times a day, which meant she was finally gaining back the weight she had lost during her months on the streets. Her clothes were simple but clean and new. She had her own key to her own front door, but the biggest change was the music lessons. Professor Williams was Dr. Chen's choice for Rosa's main teacher, and he was nothing like Rosa had expected. He was a tall, serious man who had performed with symphony orchestras around the world. When Rosa first met him, she was intimidated by his reputation and his stern expression. "Show me what you know," he had said during their first lesson, gesturing toward the grand piano in his studio. Rosa had played the same Chopin piece that had changed her life at the restaurant. She played it exactly the way she always had, with all the emotion and passion that came naturally to her. When she finished, Professor Williams was quiet for a long time. "You have the most natural musical instinct I've ever encountered," he finally said. "But technically, you're a mess." Rosa's heart had sunk. After all the praise from Dr. Chen and the people at the restaurant, she thought she was already good enough. "Don't look so discouraged," Professor Williams continued. "Having perfect technique is something we can teach. Having your kind of musical soul is something you're born with. Most of my students have excellent technique but no real feeling for the music. You have incredible feeling but need to learn the proper foundation." And so began the hardest 6 months of Rosa's life. Every day, she would spend hours working on finger exercises that seemed boring and pointless. Professor Williams made her completely relearn how to hold her hands, how to move her wrists, how to use her arms and shoulders when she played. It felt like learning to walk all over again. "You've developed bad habits from teaching yourself," he would say whenever Rosa got frustrated. "We need to break those habits and build proper technique, or you'll hurt yourself trying to play more advanced pieces." Some days, Rosa wanted to quit. The simple songs she had played beautifully before now sounded choppy and awkward as she tried to use the new techniques Professor Williams was teaching her. Her music, which had always been her escape, sometimes felt like work. Dr. Chen would stop by during these difficult times, as if she could sense when Rosa was struggling. "This is normal," she would say, sitting beside Rosa at the piano. "Every serious musician goes through this period where things get worse before they get better. You're rebuilding your playing from the ground up. It takes time. But what if I lose what made my playing special?" Rosa asked during one particularly frustrating lesson. "What if all this technique stuff makes my music sound cold and boring?" Dr. Chen smiled. "Rosa, what made your playing special wasn't your technique. It was your heart, your story, your ability to make people feel something. That doesn't go away. We're just giving you better tools to express it." Slowly, Rosa began to understand what her teachers meant. As her technique improved, she found she could play more complicated pieces. Music that had seemed impossible before was now within her reach. Her hands were stronger, more flexible. She could play faster passages without getting tired and softer passages without the notes disappearing. And Professor Williams was right about something else too. As her technical skills improved, her natural musicality didn't disappear. Instead, it became more powerful. She could now express subtle emotions that her limited technique had prevented before. The real breakthrough came during her 4th month of lessons. Professor Williams had given her a piece by Rachmaninoff, a composer Rosa had heard of but never attempted to play. The music was incredibly difficult, with complex rhythms and passages that required both hands to work independently. "I don't think I can do this," Rosa had said, looking at the pages of notes that seemed to swim before her eyes. 6 months ago, you couldn't do the Chopin piece properly either, Professor Williams replied. But you didn't know that then, so you played it with complete confidence. Trust your preparation. Rosa worked on the Rachmaninoff piece for weeks. There were times when she wanted to throw the sheet music across the room. Her left hand couldn't keep up with her right hand. The rhythm in the middle section made no sense. The emotional shifts in the music seemed impossible to capture. But gradually, piece by piece, it started to come together. The day Rosa first played the entire piece without stopping, Professor Williams did something she had never seen him do before. He smiled. Not just a small, polite smile, but a genuine expression of joy and pride. "Now you're starting to become the musician you were meant to be," he said. Word of Rosa's progress was spreading through the conservatory. Other students would find excuses to walk past the practice rooms when she was playing. Some of the advanced students who had been studying music their entire lives would stop in the hallways to listen. Dr. Chen arranged for Rosa to perform at small events around the city. Nothing as big as a concert hall, but coffee shops with piano nights, community centers, small fundraising events. Each performance helped Rosa gain confidence and experience performing for audiences. The video of her restaurant performance had found its way onto the internet, where it was viewed by thousands of people. Comments poured in from musicians around the world, praising her talent and expressing amazement that she was self-taught. Music schools reached out, offering scholarships and opportunities. But Rosa was exactly where she wanted to be, working with Dr. Chen and Professor Williams, surrounded by other serious music students improving every day. She was becoming not just a better musician but a more confident person. Still, sometimes late at night, Rosa would think about the restaurant where it all started. She would remember the feeling of being hungry and desperate, of having nowhere to go and no one who believed in her abilities. Those memories weren't painful anymore. Instead, they reminded her of how far she had come, and how many people had never gotten the chance she had been given. "I want to help other kids like me," she told Dr. Chen one afternoon as they walked through the conservatory grounds. "Kids who have talent but no one to recognize it." Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly what I was hoping you would say. I think you're ready for the next step." 2 years after that cold night outside the restaurant, Rosa stood backstage at Lincoln Center, one of the most famous concert halls in the world. Through a gap in the curtains, she could see 2,000 people in their seats, waiting to hear her play. The lights dimmed and Rosa took a deep breath. This was the moment she had dreamed about since she was a little girl, playing on that $5 keyboard her mother bought at a yard sale. But as she walked toward the gleaming concert grand piano on stage, Rosa wasn't thinking about her childhood dreams. She was thinking about the 12 kids sitting in the front row. All of them had stories similar to hers. Kids who had been in foster care or homeless or forgotten by the system. Kids who had talent but no one to believe in them. Through the program Rosa had started with Dr. Chen, these young musicians were getting the same chance Rosa had received. The audience applauded as Rosa sat down at the piano bench. She adjusted the seat, placed her hands on the keys, and began to play the same Chopin piece that had changed her life 2 years ago. But this time was different. Now Rosa had the technical skills to match her natural musicality. Every note was perfect, but more than that, every note had meaning. She had learned to channel all of her experiences into her music. The loneliness, the fear, the hope, the gratitude. It all flowed through her fingers onto the keys. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every note. Rosa could feel their attention like a physical thing, drawing the music out of her and sending it back amplified. This was what Professor Williams had meant when he talked about the connection between performer and audience. It wasn't just about playing the notes correctly. It was about sharing something real and human through music. When the piece ended, the silence stretched for several heartbeats before the applause began. Rosa stood and bowed, looking out at the audience. In the front row, she could see the 12 young musicians clapping enthusiastically. Behind them, she spotted Dr. Chen wiping tears from her eyes. Professor Williams was there too, nodding his approval. But the person Rosa was most excited to see was sitting in the 10th row. The restaurant manager who had given her a chance that cold night was there with his wife, both of them beaming with pride. After the concert, Rosa had planned to attend the reception where important people from the music world wanted to meet her. Record labels were interested in signing her. Symphony orchestras wanted her to perform with them. Universities were offering her positions as a guest artist, but first, she had something more important to do. Rosa had arranged for a special event at Belmont's restaurant, the place where her new life had begun. The same dining room where she had first played for a meal was now filled with foster kids, social workers, and families who supported the music program Rosa had created. She had personally invited every child in the city's foster care system who had shown any interest in music. Some played instruments, others just loved to listen, but all of them understood what it was like to feel invisible and forgotten. The manager, Mr. Rodriguez, had been thrilled to host the event. The restaurant had become somewhat famous after the video of Rosa's first performance went viral. People came from all over the city hoping to hear music in the same place where Rosa had been discovered. I still can't believe that scared girl who asked to play for food is now performing at Lincoln Center, Mr. Rodriguez said to Rosa as she prepared for the special concert. I'm still the same person, Rosa replied. I just have better opportunities now. The same piano where Rosa had first revealed her talent was waiting for her. But tonight she wouldn't be the only one playing. Rosa had spent months working with the 12 young musicians in her program, preparing them for this moment. Each of them would perform a piece they had chosen, showing the community what was possible when talented kids got the support they needed. 10-year-old Luis played a simple but beautiful piece on the violin. 15-year-old Maya sang a song she had written about her experiences in foster care. 13-year-old David played jazz piano with a style that reminded Rosa of herself when she was younger, playing by feel and instinct. Each performance was met with enthusiastic applause from the audience. Rosa could see social workers taking notes, potential foster families paying attention, and community leaders realizing that there were talented kids everywhere if they just took the time to look. When it was Rosa's turn to play, she chose something different from her Lincoln Center performance. Instead of classical music, she played a piece she had composed herself, inspired by her journey from the streets to the concert hall. The music started soft and uncertain like a lost child looking for home. Gradually it grew stronger and more confident as helping hands appeared. The melody soared when opportunities opened up, but never forgot its humble beginning. It ended with a triumphant but gentle resolution, like someone who had found their place in the world and was now reaching back to help others find theirs. As the last notes faded, Rosa stood up and looked around the room. These weren't wealthy patrons in fancy clothes like at Lincoln Center. These were social workers who stayed late to advocate for kids, foster parents who opened their homes to children who needed love, and young people who were still looking for their own chances to shine. 2 years ago, I stood outside this restaurant hungry and desperate, Rosa said to the audience. I asked if I could play for a meal, and Mr. Rodriguez gave me a chance when he had every reason to say no. That one moment of kindness changed everything. She paused, looking at the young musicians who were part of her program. But the most important thing I learned isn't about music at all. It's that there are talented, incredible young people everywhere who just need someone to believe in them. The kid sitting quietly in the back of the classroom might be a brilliant writer. The girl in the foster home might be an amazing artist. The boy living in his car might be the next great musician. Rosa gestured toward her students. These 12 kids represent thousands of others who have gifts the world hasn't discovered yet. My goal isn't just to help them become better musicians. It's to help them believe in themselves the way Dr. Chen helped me believe in myself. The applause was thunderous, but Rosa barely heard it. She was looking at Luis, who had tears in his eyes because someone had finally listened to him play violin. She was watching Maya, who was already talking to a social worker about scholarship opportunities. She was seeing David beam with pride because he had just performed jazz piano for the first time in front of an audience. This was better than Lincoln Center, Rosa realized. This was what her music was really for, not just to entertain people who could already afford concert tickets, but to open doors for kids who needed them. As the evening ended and people began to leave, Rosa sat down at the piano one more time. She played softly, just for herself, the same simple melody her mother used to hum when Rosa was little. Dr. Chen appeared beside the piano bench. Your mother would be proud, she said quietly. Rosa smiled, her fingers still moving over the keys. I think she knew this would happen somehow. She always said I had magic in my fingers. You do, Dr. Chen replied. But the real magic is what you're doing with it.